the latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is DoubleTap TV.
Welcome to another edition of DoubleTap TV. Thank you guys so much for being along for the ride. You're going to want to keep this information handy, not only for this show because you've used it, but for other shows as well. Our email address is feedback@AMI.CA. And on Twitter, if you're not following us already, you're going to want to do that. It is @DoubleTapCanada. And when you reach out, use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, and we'll get to your questions on a show just like this one. This week, we're answering your questions in a show that we're calling Ask Us Anything. I am Marc Aflalo. By my side this week, not only Stephen Scott, welcome Stephen, but also Shaun Preece of DoubleTap Canada fame, which you can hear on AMI Audio every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Is that the right time, guys?
Yes, I think so.
Woohoo! I got it right.
We're never quite sure.
Oh, guys, it's that time of year where we gather the inbox and we go through the email and we ask people to send in video messages and we try to answer those extremely difficult or, answer the questions. What am I going to say here? You guys know what it's like. We get so many questions, but we don't always have the time to get to it, right, Stephen?
Oh, we never get the time to answer questions. I mean, especially on our radio show, where I think it's basically because you, Mark, don't stop talking for an hour. I mean, I'm not guilty of that at all. So, I blame you.
I'm looking bewildered right now, just to let you know. I don't know what you are referring to, Mr. Blabbermouth. Shaun, defense, something here? Come on, please.
Well, I seem to remember, most of the first 5 minutes of every show is either a discussion about biscuits versus cookies or what Stephen's bought. So, I'm with you, Mark.
Oh, charming.
Sorry, Stephen.
Anyhow, guys, thanks for being here this week on this Ask Us Anything show. Guys, it's no joke. Every couple of weeks we get at least 2 to 3 emails from different people about various things, leading from how do I set up voiceover on my iPhone to what's the best smart switch for this device, what's the best smart speaker. Is there any question, think back long and hard here, is there any question in particular that you remember going, okay, that's just absolutely insane?
Wow, you get so many questions. I think what I love about the questions we get from our audience, Mark, is that we get such in-depth questions. I talk about, and I think it might be coming up in one of the questions on this episode, is around a microphone kit that I bought. And, immediately as I mentioned that I had literally just bought the thing, I had an email with about 20 questions, a tick list of things that I should go through immediately to check if this works and that works. But, that's because there's such an absence of information in the blind community. So as soon as we find someone who has, at least the ability to answer the question, maybe not instantly, but certainly over time, you kind of latch on to that, don't you? And that's the difference, I think, where most people can Google the answer. We can't always Google the answer. If you try, as I've mentioned this before, if you ask Google how to turn off Jaws, it will tell you how to switch the DVD player off and the film that's playing, not the screen reader. So, sometimes it's good to know that the information's out there, and it's good to know that we can at least try and answer some of those questions.
Shaun, anything in particular to stand out for you as in terms of a question that's been like, oh my God?
Well, for me, it's always the keyboard shortcuts that I'm just learning all the time. Because it doesn't matter how long you've been using it. I've been using a computer for years and a screen reader for years, and there's still keyboard shortcuts and Windows shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts that I never knew existed, and they can make such a difference to how you do things or, in a particular app. And, when people ask me questions and I do a little bit of research, you think, wow, that's changed everything that I do on a computer as well. So it's that sort of thing. It's sort of learning together. It's amazing.
Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break here, intentionally short segment here, because I want to make sure we have a lot of time to get to your guys' questions. You sent in some videos. You guys have sent in questions on Twitter. Again, if you're not following us already, it is at DoubleTap Canada. Using that hashtag, AskDoubleTap, will bring it to our attention. And of course, if you want to email something in, whether it's a question, a comment, a video, it's feedback@AMI.CA. This week, we are joined by Shaun Preece and, of course, Stephen Scott. I am Marc Aflalo. We'll be back in just a moment here on DoubleTap TV.
For more great DoubleTap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is DoubleTap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV, guys. Thank you so much for being here again. That email address, feedback@AMI.CA on Twitter. If you're not following us already, do that. It's at Double Tap Canada with the hashtag #AskDoubleTap. We are getting to your questions from the past couple months, because we do this every couple months, try to clear out that inbox for those messages we haven't necessarily got to. I am Marc Aflalo with Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece by my side this week. Gentlemen, let's start with a video message from Shane asking us how best to use share screen using SharePlay in iOS.
I have a question for you about accessibility, and it's actually in regards to iOS and Apple products. One of the things that I want to learn how to do is to use the share screen or SharePlay on iOS. A couple of things. Do you need to be on Wi-Fi to use that feature? For me, one of the main things that I want to use this for is to actually help show others how to use their devices. SharePlay could be a really good feature, and any help that you could provide me so that I could, be able to show, other visually impaired people, or even, other sighted people on how to use their devices, I'd be really interested in hearing what you have to say about things.
Gentlemen, which one of you would like to take this one? Because I have absolutely no idea.
Stephen, it's on you, I think.
Oh, thanks. Right, okay. I love. Was that a bus that just flew past there? Right, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it did. It is.
I almost ended up under it. Okay, so this is interesting because Shaun and I did have a play around with SharePlay when it first launched, because we were both quite keen to see how this worked. And to my understanding, SharePlay is exactly that. It's about sharing content. So, eventually I imagine apps like Netflix and others will be part of this. But ultimately, if you've got an Apple TV subscription and you're in the same country, that's quite important as well. Mark and I learned this the hard way when we did this demo live on Double Tap Canada. But we couldn't get it to work. You have to be in the same country.
Live demos.
Yeah, never do those. Really bad idea, which is why we're not going to do that here. But what is interesting is that, when you are in the same country, when you are in the same region or whatever, you're able to share that content. And what's brilliant is, if, for example, in my case, I want audio description, certainly the case for Shaun, he wants audio description, we can both enjoy that content. But, Mark, if you and I want to watch a film or a program together, then we can do that. You don't obviously require the audio description. You might want it, but you don't necessarily want to have it on. You can turn it off and I can enjoy it. So I love the way you can personalize the content and still share it with friends. Now, when it comes to share screen, I think what Shane's getting at here is he wants to be able to showcase to people what he's doing on his phone. And that's exactly what share screen is. But if you're looking for an interactive option here, then I don't think you're going to get that. It's not going to be a case of someone can see your screen and interact with that screen as you go along. That sounds like a great idea, and it sounds like a great educational tool down the line, but that's not really what this is. This is about showing somebody what's on your screen, which is great for demonstrating applications and the kind of things, I think, Shane, that you're after.
This is interesting because, I can imagine this being used one day when you're also in the same room as someone. Imagine, Stephen, that you're sitting down and you and I are watching a movie and you want to hear the description, but obviously I don't want to hear the description. To be able to put headphones on and watch things in real time in the same room, that would be pretty cool.
It is, and it's something that we've kind of been trying to find a solution for a long time. There have been some projects. The name, Shaun might remember, I think it was ActiveView, I think it was, the one in the States.
That's right.
It was a similar kind of project. The idea there was that you would start a film, and a bit like the way Shazam works. If you've ever used Shazam to monitor the lyrics of a song as it plays, how does it get it so accurate in that, the lyrics actually come along exactly as the film or the music in this case plays? Well, it's the same kind of process that this ActiveView app was using with movie. So you would start the movie, and then the audio description, just the audio description track, not the movie track, would sync up and start playing out in your ear, which meant, because the problem at the moment is, and this is the case in the UK, if you go to a cinema, you have to wear a cinema-issued pair of headphones, been worn 1,000 times. In a COVID era, that's not ideal, right? So you don't really need that. What you want is to be able to take out your own headphones and use those. And even just an earpiece. Sitting in a cinema with a ridiculously large pair of headphones on, I used to get comments and interruptions during the film because people would be like, what are you doing? So just really, really bizarre way of doing it. This way is so much better. And I think that what Apple have done here is kind of nudged us forward a bit towards that. And again, it's an example of how accessibility comes through, but unintentionally. You know, it's an unintentional benefit of this technology, this SharePlay technology. So yeah, I mean, it can even work not just across phones, but across Apple TV devices as well. So you could be watching something via the Apple TV, and I could just add on to that through my phone and listen to that audio described content in my earpiece.
I think as well, the ability you can share applications, so you can play games together or play with apps. That's another aspect of SharePlay, which I think is going to be really cool in the future. It's early days yet, but I think SharePlay is interesting.
We got a question here. Daniel wrote in an email to feedback@AMI.CA. He writes about digital recorders, guys. He goes, I'm looking for an accessible digital recorder which uses mini SD and which also has an external mic or line in a 3.5 millimeter jack. That's a typical headphone jack. I was wondering if you guys had any suggestions. So I'm thinking of something along the lines of the Plex Talk or the Victor Stream, but which has an actual 3.5 millimeter line in jack. Any input would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Any input would be greatly appreciated. I like that.
As a pun?
Bit of a joke in there. I quite like that. Yeah, but again, I would go to, I mean, Victor Reader is a great example of that. The Victor Reader Stream, Victor Reader Trek, which is the same device, but ultimately has GPS control built in as well, so you can navigate with maps. The Plex Talk is a good example of it, the Blaze ET as well. These are all great specialist devices, but if you're looking for something that's accessible and mainstream, then maybe look at the Olympus line of dictation devices. Now, I will say there's not a huge amount of them left with voice guidance. You might even need to go onto eBay. I did that with mine. I jumped onto eBay and got my DM7, I think it was, at the time, or my DM5. I can't remember. Both of those had voice guidance in them. Shaun, I know you've used, what is it, the LS14 was the one you had with voice guidance?
Yeah, the Olympus LS14. Now, it's got voice guidance on it. It's not really truly accessible out of the box. There is some setup to be done. You do need some sighted assistance. But once you get past that, it is perfectly accessible. But it depends on your use case, really. If you're just looking for an accessible dictaphone, there may be, the real basic ones out there may be enough. You may find one with a line-in input, and it's just a case of memorizing, the record button and plugging it in via USB to drag the files off. It really depends on your use case, but there are other options. If you're talking podcast recording, interviews, you've got the PodTrack P4, and although they're not accessible, as in there's a screen reader or whatever, you can sort of learn and memorize the dials and the buttons on it. So, there's no real simple answer to this. It does depend on what your use case is, but sometimes just the basic, the most simple option is the best option.
Yeah, but then remember, Daniel picks up on the fact he wants micro SD and he wants line in. So I'm not entirely sure what the application is here, but he's looking for those specifics. And I think when it comes to it, you need to look for a device that's capable of that. These dictaphones, especially from Olympus, and I mention that only because they are a company that did spend a lot of time and effort putting voice guidance into their devices. Of course, there are alternative dictaphones from other companies like Sony, but you don't get voice guidance with those. And I would say those are really good. I have a couple of them actually, generally filled with phone numbers and notes, because I'm just using it as a basic dictaphone, right? And it is literally just a case of just going through each note one by one with the cursor keys on the device. But with these more fancy devices, you do have line in, you do have that micro SD record option, higher audio quality option, better microphones as well, and that voice guidance to navigate through the file system. But Shaun says, don't worry about the micro SD card too much. You don't necessarily have to keep pulling that in and out of the device, because you've got that little pop-out USB at the bottom that allows you the ability to hook it straight to a computer, either for charging or for data.
Ask Us Anything is the theme of this week's show. I am Marc Aflalo with Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece. This week we're going to take a quick break and come back. We've got a question from Daniel about your Rode wireless microphone, Stephen. It says DoubleTap TV.
For more great DoubleTap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is DoubleTap TV.
Ask Us Anything is the theme of this week's show. Welcome back to DoubleTap TV. I am Marc Aflalo with Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece this week. Shaun, familiar face, a familiar voice from DoubleTap Canada, heard every single week on AMI Audio, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Gentlemen, we don't have that much time left, so I'm going to go rapid fire into these, okay? We're going to start with a question from Daniel, who asks, how accessible are the Rode wireless microphones that you got, Stephen? Can you record on them directly without using a computer?
No, you wanted rapid fire, right? I mean, I could talk for hours about those. But no, you can. Yes, they have got built-in solid-state memory, and when you finished recording, that you can just plug them straight into your computer via USB-C cable, and it displays as a hard drive, so you can just pull off the files. The key thing, though, is the setup process. You will need some sighted assistance to set up. The main setting being recording set to always. That means as soon as you turn them on, they start recording, both independently. Brilliant device.
Question from Rebecca. How do you use Windows Remote Desktop as a screen reader user, and how is this different from Windows 365? Thanks, as always, for a great show.
Wow. You want quickfire on these?
Good luck.
I think we should let Mark answer this one, to be honest.
I pass it off to Shaun.
Okay, I'm under the bus. Okay, so Windows 365 as a service is a computer in the cloud. So you don't need an actual computer, a tower system or a laptop. You can make your own in the cloud and log into it and use it on a smart TV or on an iPad or something like that. It's not an actual physical computer that you own. It's a service that you can use to use a computer, but that's for business only. It's not available just to any of us yet. The remote desktop client for Windows, so you can say I've got a laptop in the house and I want to connect to my computer in the studio. You can do it that way. You can control it remotely, and the audio from the device I'm controlling, so the computer in here with the screen reader on, will be sent back to the laptop in the house which I'm using, and the screen reader works absolutely fine. It's just like I'm sat in front of it. Stephen says there is a little bit of a lag.
There is.
I say there isn't.
Question from Greg. I want to upgrade from my iPhone 8. I know. But don't necessarily want the iPhone 13, as exciting as the 13 is. With cost being an issue, especially if you're a member of the disability community and perhaps on a fixed budget, can you recommend an older iPhone that would suit my needs?
Well, there's only one answer to this. iPhone SE. Simple as that. You get the same form factor as you do with the iPhone 8, so you get that familiar style. You don't get Face ID, but you do get Touch ID through the home button that you already have on your iPhone 8, and costs are comparatively lower, so that's always good. But stick around, because in 2022 there are rumours of a new iPhone SE possibly with 5G built in, so it might be worth holding off just now. But SE is I call it the BE phone, the blind edition, because it's so cool, it's so easy to use. It's got the Touch ID, which I love. Although I must say the iPhone 13 mini has been my favourite phone of the moment.
Final question, guys, and you have a little bit more time to answer this one. I saved the best for last because I knew we'd need a little bit of time for it. It's a question from Mary. I keep hearing you guys talk about Intel, AMD, and M1. What does all of this mean, and what should I be looking for when buying a computer? Is there a right option? I think I will start on this one, gentlemen. Number one, I guess when you're looking for a computer, what I always recommend to everybody, or what I always ask them first, is what do you use the computer for? And I think we have two schools of thought here. We've got the creator world, where people are editing audio and video and doing some higher, more intense applications. And then we've got the kind of basic user, the business user who's using Office, Word, Pages, numbers, browsing the internet and watching a video. Across the board, whether it's Intel, AMD, or M1, you're going to have an option for you in this category. Intel has been around longer than all of these different processors combined. They're tried, tested, and true, as is AMD. AMD kind of came in a little bit further after Intel, and they have very comparable processors. You start with kind of the i5s all the way up to the i9s, and as you would guess, the lower the number, the less powerful the processor is going to be, and as a result, you're going to notice some lag. However, these days, with solid-state memory and solid-state storage, the difference is so it's hard to even tell. Enter Apple and the M1 silicon. Apple's been designing chips since the first iPhone. They had their own chips in that iPhone, and they've been doing variations of it ever since. The M1 is the first time that a chip has actually been in a computer. Granted, we've seen it in an iPad, in the 12.9-inch iPad Pro last year, but now the M1 first made its debut last year in the MacBook Air, and now we're seeing it in the Pro lineup of computers. The coolest thing about the M1, I find, guys, is that, and tell me if I'm wrong, and I tell this to a lot of people, regardless of what you're doing on that computer, if you get the entry-level M1, for those basic users doing the regular business stuff, and who might dabble in something like, I don't know, iMovie, and might maybe want to play with video editing, you're completely fine. The M1 is more than powerful enough. It has discrete graphics that are separate, so that it's controlling graphics power separately. It's got you completely covered. Your regular office tasks, your streaming, everything's going to be phenomenal. If you are a pro user, then you can go to the M1, Pro Max and the M1 and, up the memory and up the storage. But really, that M1 chip is an incredible lower cost option and a great entry level point into the Apple ecosystem. So Intel, AMD for Windows computers, M1 for Apple computers. I would say you'll have to be less picky about what you get when it comes to M1 because the entry level one will do you just fine. Gents?
Perfect.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I'd go one step further than that and say, even when it comes to gigabytes of memory that we hear about, people talk about 8 gig versus 16 gig and all that. Don't worry about that. When it comes to M1, it doesn't matter anymore. I've got a base level, entry level Mac Mini with 8 gig RAM, 512 gig solid state drive, and that machine is more powerful than any machine I've used before. And it continues to astound me how I can run Final Cut on it, running VoiceOver. I can still run iMovie, I can still run all my audio editing programs, still do all my everyday tasks. Like Mark says, I have no disruption to this device with speed or anything else. It's a fantastic device. I'm a bit of a fan.
The final word goes to Shaun Preece.
No, absolutely right. I would say if you're looking at a Windows computer, I wouldn't even think about, don't worry if it's Intel or AMD. If you're looking at an Apple computer, if you're looking at a Mac, then definitely it's got to be the M1. If there's an Intel version or model they're selling in the shop, I would probably steer away from it and go for the M1 because of the reasons that both you two have said. They are amazing.
Guys, thank you so much for being with me this week, especially fielding all these questions as we get not only here on Double Tap TV, but also on Double Tap Canada. On behalf of Steve and Scott and Shaun Preece, I am Marc Aflalo. Thank you guys for being here at home. If you want to get in touch, feedback at AMI.CA, and of course, follow us on Twitter at Double Tap Canada with the hashtag, which is #DoubleTap. We'll catch you again next week.
Hosted and written by Marc Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing and motion graphics, Jordan Steeves. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director of Production, Kara Nye. Director Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2022, Accessible Media, Inc.